Hello, this week we're going to be UV unwrapping the dog that we've been making over the last 2 weeks. To start off, I'm going to come to the top right here and I'm going to open up a second viewport and set this to be our UVs. To save us some time, I'm going to go into wireframe mode, select half our mesh and then delete it. This way we only have to UV unwrap half the mesh and then we can mirror it over later. Now let's start off in edge mode. The hotkey is 2, and then we can select the loops here going around the back leg. Then we can go to either the UV or edge menu and select mark seams. Then we can select the ring around the foot here and an edge running up the dog's leg and mark these as well. We don't want to select the center loop because most dogs have a little spiral pattern in their fur just here. Now that the leg is marked, let us select the faces and give it a test unwrap. To do that, we can go up to the UV menu and open UV unwrap and then select conformal, but any of the top 3 won't work for this mesh. Now moving into the front leg, let's select this edge loop here. After all, when we modeled it, we did make this edge loop so we could make a seam here. And then we can grab the feet. Then we can select this edge and mark seams and unwrap the leg. We're going to use this edge here because it is the least visible edge on the dog's leg. Now that we have the legs, let's work on the body. Start by marking the point the neck connects to the head. And then we can select the edge next to the leg and running into the center. Lastly, we can select the tail loop and the edge running between the tail and back leg. Next, let's select everything but the head and give it a new UV unwrap. I'm recommending unwrapping parts as you go to see if there's going to be any problems with the shells before doing a final unwrap of the full mesh. If you're happy with the body's unwrap, we can start working on the head. To start off, we can remove the mouth and tongue from the head. And when that's projected, we can again remove the ears. I'm going to select the corner edges on the ear so that we can make it a little more flat. Now that there's only the head left, we can select it and unwrap it. You can see that the back of the head is a bit scrunched up, so we're going to need a seam there. So I'm going to go ahead and add a seam there and then redo the unwrap, which will give us a much better UV shell. When that's UV unwrapped, we can select everything, and once more, UV unwrap it. This will prevent any texture scaling problems we may have later on. When it comes to placing the UVs, you want parts that belong together sitting next to each other. An example of this would be the feet sitting next to the legs. When placing, we don't want UVs facing in opposite directions because this will mess up normal maps. I recommend scaling important parts up a little bit, like the face, so that we can just have a little more detail when adding texture. I want the leg shells placed so that the front legs are in front of the back legs, with the soles of the feet next to their respective legs. We can also create a new texture, setting its generation type to UV grid, and assigning that to our dog. Now let's finish this off by adding the last UV shell into our grid and checking our shell's orientations. Looking at the shells, I feel the mouth shell is going to be a bit hard to texture, so I'm going to redo it, cutting it into two and then redoing the UV unwrap. Now we can mirror this over again and call it done, but I'm also going to go over unwrapping it so that the whole dog can have a unique texture. Blender used to have it that if you mirrored, you would have a copy of your UVs for the new mirror, but that seems not to be the case in 4.3. To get these new UV shells, I'm going to mark a seam running along the dog's body and then reproject the head's UVs. Looking at the shells next to each other, we can see what part of the shells we can connect together. So let's select these edges and clear the seams. And project these shells and then move them to the side for now. As for the body, we just need to remove the seam along the dog's back and then project that. And the same goes for the tail. Now that we have the seams marked correctly, we can project the mesh and start organizing it. I'll start off by rotating the legs and replacing them on their respective sides of the grids. So, left side on the left side of the grid, right side on the right. Then I can make sure that the face and body are rotated, facing the same direction, and scale the face up a bit so we can add a little more detail in texturing. Next, I'll place the head and body in the middle of the grid, and then place the legs on either side. And then we can place the tail and ears, making sure that they're facing the right direction and are on their respective sides. I forgot to remove the seam that split the mouth in two, so I'll remove that and then reproject this. And scale it down. And then place it in the space just here between the head and the body. Now finally place the soles of the feet next to the legs, making sure that they're facing the right direction, and then we're done. So thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next week.